We demystify what goes on behind the therapy room door. Join us on this voyage of discovery and co-creative conversations. This is the Therapy Show, Behind Closed Doors podcast.
With Bob Cooke
and Kellie Barratt.
Hello and welcome to the Therapy Show Behind Closed Doors. I'm here with Bob Cooke and my name is Kellie Barratt. Hello, Bob.
Hello, Kellie.
So, Bob, tonight we're on episode number 209 and the title is 565 Models of Therapy in the UK. Is a model of therapy really crucial for the therapist?
Interesting. Now, am I still wonderful for you? Jackie never missed a wonderful, and I just wondered when you didn't say it. I wondered, am I still wonderful for her?
Always wonderful for me, Bob. Always.
I feel soothed now.
Yes, do you know, I always have Jackie's words in my head, and I've forgotten to say it. The wonderful Mr. Bob Cooke.
No, can't Okay, so yeah, 562 or 561. Now, where the number comes from was from Windy Dryden's book that he wrote, I think about 4 or 5 years ago. I forget the title of it. Windy Dryden is quite a well-known writer, editor of psychotherapy and counselling books. I met him years ago. I would say, when did I start my career? 85, so probably 87, on a television program called Your Right to Choose. And I was on one side with a psychodynamic psychotherapist, and he was on the other side talking about counselling. And I sort of followed his career in books since then. And I can't remember which of the books it was, but it was about 3 or 4 years ago. And he was talking about, well, he mentioned in the book, there was 561 different models or types of psychotherapy and counselling in the United Kingdom, which surprised me that there were that many. I could think of probably off the top of my head 50 or 60, but anyway, that's what he came up with. And it made me think, and this is why this is the title of the podcast. Does what model we actually come from, is it important in the process of psychotherapy and counselling in terms of effectiveness and cure? And for the listeners who probably or might not know my background, I did do a counselling course in 1984, so there's that sort of person-centered model I know. Then I went and did a bit of training on object relations, a bit of training in Gestalt psychotherapy, but I did a major training for 15, 16 years, I suppose, in transactional analysis. And then I did another training in integrative psychotherapy for 11 or 12 years. So I've got lots of models, and I know quite a lot of models, psychodynamic models and XXX. And I know you were trained. Well, perhaps you could tell the listeners what you were trained in.
So I did a degree in psychology and counselling. So that was like the basic counselling certificates. And then I did a diploma in person-centered counselling. So that was in 2005. And then I retrained in TA, and I think I started that in 2012. So they've been my only trainings, like full trainings, like diploma level. So I was trained by a ex-psychiatric nurse in the person-centered training.
Okay.
And she'd worked on psychiatric wards for years, and then I'd kind of discovered that person-centered counselling worked.
It was effective.
Yes, yeah. So yeah, she thought so, yeah.
And you run group psychotherapy.
I do.
So I'm assuming you got trained in, or some training in a model of how to run groups.
Well, I was in a group for 5 years, so yeah. So I just kind of copied that, really. So
no other models at all? Like I know you've done a lot of extra bits of training here and there.
Oh yeah, I've done a certificate in attachment, an attachment network.
Mm.
Oh, now you're testing me, Bob.
No, I just think that model of attachment
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
interesting if we're talking about models
Yes. Yeah.
in terms of
Mm.
Bowlby's 4 levels of attachments, if that's what
Mm.
you were taught.
Yeah.
Well, that's quite a lot.
It is. Yeah. I mean, I've done my couples training, but yeah, but that was within transactional analysis.
Mm. So between the two of us,
Hmm.
we've been trained in quite a lot of approaches and models
Yeah.
in the world of psychotherapy and counselling.
Mm.
So, what do you think then, Kellie? Do you think the models um, are important in
Mm.
the road of effective psychotherapy?
I think the models are important, but I think the relationship is probably more important. And I suspect, or I've got a vague memory of there being some research to say that it was the relationship that was more important than the actual model of therapy used.
It's interesting because if you went in the 1960s to a bookstore
Mm.
that sold psychotherapy and counselling books, um, there'd be many books on different models.
Mm.
There'd be no books, or hardly any, I think, on the relationship being the curative factor for psychotherapy change.
Mm.
If you went into a bookstore now in 2025, it's the other way around. There's
Ah.
many books which talk about the relationship being the major curative factor. And that's been a steady climb, if you like, since what was called the relational turn in psychotherapy in 1993, when you had many books, especially in the psychodynamic world, talking about the relationship being a very important factor towards cure rather than the model. And you're right, and I think the research you're thinking of is by two researchers, and I think one of the person's name was Northcross, where they did a research of many therapists, and I don't know the number of the research study, but
Mm.
came out with that. I forget which book it was, but saying that the relationship is more important than actually the model in terms of therapeutic cure. And since then, you've had many books talking about relationship, how important it is. And indeed, in transaction analysis, we've had many books talking about how important the relationship is in terms of cure.
Mm. So you mentioned the relational turn a couple of
Yeah.
podcasts ago, I think, and I've never heard of it.
Mm.
So was there lots of research done or lots of people, developing it? What is it really, the relational turn?
Really, when people use the word relational turn, they're talking about the movement away from models,
Ah, okay.
the idea of the relationship between the co-created, client and the therapist as being the major importance in terms of cure rather than the model. And many books came out, that's why it's called the relational turn, turning away from techniques and models to the relationship as being the most important. So it's a period of time when a lot of books came out saying the same thing.
Mm.
The research by Northcross, I'm sure it is that the name, came out.
Mm.
You had Lorena Gomez in her book on object relations. You had Stephen Mitchell, the well-known British psychoanalyst, talking about the importance of the relationship. So you had quite a lot of books coming out saying the same thing, backed up by research.
Mm.
And that period or that time, people talk about as the relational turn.
And that was happening independently in all the different schools of therapy.
Yeah, that's correct. All about 1990s, in the 1990s, and we've had a plenty of articles, books, research in the 2000s up to 2025, arguing arguing the same thing, or debating the same thing, or discussing the same thing. You know yourself, in transaction analysis in 2008, Lena Hargaden and Charlotte Sills produced a book called Relational Transaction Analysis. I think, if that was the title of it. So, in the Erskine talks about the same thing, and many writers will do. And in fact, you have relational psychoanalysts now.
Oh,
where people get off the couch.
yeah.
So, there's been a big shift, huge shift, to the focus on the relationship being the most important thing. I mean, we're really talking about, are models effective, in terms of cure?
Yeah.
So, as I said, in the 1990s, you had this period of time called the relational turn, which argued, many authors, many researchers, many, if we talk about psychotherapy direction, would argue that the actual, and you said it yourself, the actual co-created relationship between the client and the therapist is more important than the model. Now, that's why I wanted this discussion, and I wondered what you thought. And it seems that you follow the authors of 1992 onwards.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, and it makes me think of kind of short-term therapy, though, like how hard it might be to develop a therapeutic relationship in very short-term therapy. So I don't know, something like CBT, perhaps, if it's like through the NHS and it's not many sessions, then that might be, because it takes quite a while to build that contact and the connection. Well, it takes me quite a while, certainly 3 or 4 sessions for that contact to build. So, but yes, I do believe that the relationship is more important.
It's interesting. Let's pick up at that point. Let's talk about cognitive behavioral therapy or short-term focused work, like you were just talking about there. If you went to the doctors and talked about mental health issues such as anxiety, depression, phobia, you probably, or you could be encouraged to go in the NHS way to CBT, and 10 to 1, you would be pointed towards or signposted towards a website, forgotten the title now, that you would go on and you do a lot of questionnaires and a lot of thought-provoking discussions, if you like, and homework in the CPD world. Now, as you know, I do the mental health assessments at the Institute, and many, many people come for the assessments, particularly because they do not want to go down a faceless route on a computer. They want actually a relationship.
Yes.
Now, I'm not saying all people are signposted towards that computer, the CBT route, and I'm not even saying that it isn't useful for some people, but my experience for many, many people that come is that they want a face-to-face relationship rather than a computer. And if we're going down the artificial intelligence route, you're going to get more and more of these faceless, processes I'm talking about. And I think more and more people want to have a relationship.
Yes, I agree.
That doesn't mean, I don't want you to hear that doesn't mean for some people it's not useful. And also, I don't want you to hear that some people, might go to the NHS and actually see people. But it did remind me of the number of people that come in and want a relationship rather than a computer.
Yeah, and I've had clients who've accessed psychodynamic therapy through the NHS and EMDR through the NHS. So there's a variety, and psychoanalysis actually. There's a variety, but I suspect the main bulk of the work goes through, I think in Manchester it's called something like the self-help services or something like that. So
the website I'm thinking called Beat the Blues or something like that. I'm not sure. I know that I get a lot of people who want a face-to-face relationship.
Yeah.
It's a very good area of discussion about short-term focused methods or models, because there isn't much time in 6, 12, perhaps it is in 17, which is cognitive analytical therapy, but certainly in 6 or 12 sessions to foster a relationship. So that's an interesting one to put into the mix.
I suppose the NHS or medically would see that the issue is that's to be solved. So we go in with the 6 sessions, for example. Whereas what I experience is that a client comes in with a one issue to be solved, and then over time it's like the curtains start opening as they're like, oh, actually there's a whole range of things that could do some work. It's not just the one thing. But so maybe the NHS, you go in and you work on your one topic, and then you go back into the system perhaps when the next one arises.
Yeah, that's right. It's a different approach. And then I get a lot of people who have been in the NHS 6 sessions face to face, but their challenge is that they say that the CBT model is focused on the present rather than the past. And many people want to explore how the past affects the present, which is a lot of face-to-face therapies do, of course.
Yeah, and that's how clients say or we all repeat our patterns, isn't it? So if we don't explore what's happened in the past, then it's hard to change that pattern, I think.
Well, that's where I come from, and I know you come from that. And I was thinking of the CBT world, who might have different viewpoints.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe something like, I don't know, trying to give up smoking, perhaps.
Or phobias.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
There are, and there's some research coming out that CBT is most effective actually for OCD traits.
Okay.
Thinking. So that makes sense to me, because CBT is about changes in thought processes. If you went to CBT therapist, you would have quite a lot of homework to do, and you'd be talking about journals about mood swings, all in the present.
So kind of learning about what their pattern is in the present.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's interesting about this division you come about short and long term, and you're perfectly correct that you need many sessions really to build up a predictable, dependable relationship with the therapist, which has a sense of continuity and trust.
Yeah, those words are very soothing.
Yes, they are. I could say them again, but yeah, they are quite soothing. And I think I've got a short way of thinking of that called PICS, PICS. Predictability, continuity, identity, and stability. So is that PICS or yeah? But I always think it's important in terms of build up a relationship. There's a sense of continuity and dependability and predictability. I'm
going to write that down. So P's for predictability.
I said PICS, but actually I think I've got this incorrect, because the way I think about this is predictability, continuity, stability, and dependability.
And dependability. I thought you'd said identity originally.
I did, because I thought it was PICS, but perhaps I've got it wrong. But those senses of qualities are fundamental in building up a robust working relationship, which is so central in the voyage towards effective psychotherapy.
Yes, I absolutely agree, and that's like our building blocks, isn't it? That we're there. We say we'll be there, and we are there, and we don't let the clients down.
Does a model, say Gestalt psychotherapy, say person-centered psychotherapy, say transaction analysis, say integrative psychotherapy, say psychosynthesis, say psychodynamics. I could go on. Integrative psychotherapy. Do these models, if we, become a hindrance to the building up of the relationship? In other words, if a therapist gets fixed on utilizing a model in a certain way, rather than thinking about the relationship and the predictability and the continuity and the dependability and the stability, does that then hinder the road towards effective cure?
I suspect it would. Yes, I am.
You were trained in the model of parent-adult-child transaction analysis.
Yeah.
I was as well. I was also trained in integrative psychotherapy, which thinks of parent-adult, but also thinks about interruptions to contact. But if we get fixed on one model, I think there could be a danger.
Yeah. Well, we need to stay with the client. So it's what the client
rather than being fixed on the model.
Yes. Yeah.
Is that what you were going to say?
Yeah. Yeah. I read one of Yalom's books once, and he talked about
wonderful therapist, 93 now.
Is he? Wow. Well, I really like his books. And he said every session he talks about the relationship between him and the client. And I've picked that up, and I try and do that. Like, how are we doing, me and you as the client? So what's happening between us here? And I find that really useful. So that goes with the, actually what the client needs rather than what the model requires.
Well, of course, he was trained in existential psychotherapy. And when we're talking about existential psychotherapy, we're talking about core issues of existence, identity, spirituality, those core existence issues. And it's interesting to hear you say that he said in one of his books that he would, focus also every session on the relationship between the therapist and the client. That's really interesting.
Yeah, I think it was in the Staring at the Sun, the one about.
Oh yeah, that's about death anxiety.
Ah, yes.
Specifically about death anxiety and a treatment plan which he came up with about how to deal with death anxiety. Now, I've got that book and read it a few times, but I didn't remember him saying that. Now, of course, I was just thinking about some of the dangers of that.
Of the how are me and you doing it, me and the client doing in the session?
Every session.
Yes, yeah.
I agree with you, and I think it's really important to think about it in terms of the relationship, what's going on in the relationship, and to do it every session.
I don't do it. I like the idea.
I mean, Yalom said he did, and I was thinking, well, I wonder if I'm just thinking, I'm really playing devil's advocate, I suppose. But you think of a narcissistic therapist, or a therapist that maybe have a high ego, if danger is a big enough word, of that process.
Yeah. How I do it is, if you're avoiding something, what are you avoiding with me? It's like, what's the client process driven? So
you do it every session, Kelly, do you?
No, I don't know.
No, so that's what I was picking up. Not that we don't attend to the relationship. I suppose I don't like dogma, but you do things.
Yeah, every session. Yeah.
I think I prefer flexibility, spontaneity, intuition, creativity as qualities, perhaps, that I look to, rather than a sort of ritual of attending to something every session.
Yeah. Well, it becomes a bit formulaic then. It's a bit like a tick list of things to do. Perhaps. I'm not very good at that. So having a tick list.
I think, without doubt, you and I agree.
Yes.
Or perhaps join forces with the authors of the books talking about how relationship is really effective in the road to cure, because if we get fixed on models, we might miss the person.
Yes. Yeah. Well, because if we're working on models, we're very thinky, aren't we? So we're like, because we're trying to remember the model and follow it, as opposed to that actually, are we in connection? Is the contact good?
It doesn't mean that we forget our models, because we were trained them. So it becomes a basis of an operating system within us, I think. However, or stroke and, I think it is important to really think about, without a robust relationship, therapy will take longer for certain.
Yes.
And I don't think it will be so effective. Now, people listening to this might have a completely different view, and please put it in the comments below if you have. But it's an interesting discussion to reflect on, I think.
Yes, I agree. Yeah, and I wonder what an IAPT worker might say. Access to psychological therapist, perhaps. Yeah. Yeah.
That would be interesting. See, in the NHS, I don't know that much about it, but you've got, different scales of therapists. Therapists that deal with personality disorders and very confused, disturbed people, and people that are on different levels, less intense, if you like, dealing with common, normal neurotic problems, if you want to put it that way. It'd be interesting what their models are. Usually they're CBT.
Yes, yeah. I have had somebody who was a friend who works with the Mental Capacity Act, and her suggestion was that long-term therapy was creating dependence. So that was an interesting discussion for us to have.
Well, without going off onto another podcast, I can say immediately what I think about that. And that is that I think every therapist needs to think about dependency and what that means. But I'd like to also reframe the word dependency to dependability.
Yeah. Oh, that's a nice transformation. Yes.
Because I think it's really important that the clients can depend on the therapist, depend on the therapist to be there, depend on the therapist to have their back, depend on the therapist perhaps to repair some of the healing that they never had before. I could go on. So I think I like the word dependability as an essential feature for a psychotherapist. Now, that said, I think it is important to think about, does the client get so merged in a relationship with the therapist that they then lack self-agency or autonomy? That's an interesting one to think about. But I think dependability for a therapist is essential.
Yes.
Now, I think I might be off this podcast, but it's an interesting...
Yes. Think about that for another title.
Well, if we think of the model of attachment, have we come to the end of nearly?
Well, you see me looking at the time. Yeah, not far, Bob. Another 5 minutes or so.
Very quickly, if we think of Bowlby's model of attachments, avoidant attachment, disorganized attachment, ambivalent attachment, if we think of that model, and then we think of dependency, we are then, it's easy to turn it into a whole idea of over-attachment.
Yes.
And the problems that might come with that, vis-a-vis the lack of agency for the client. So I think they're important things to consider, but please, dependability is such an important quality for a therapist to have, so that the client can feel safe and secure in a world where they can have permissions to express perhaps things they've never expressed before.
Yes, I think the clients come in to say the unsayable. So it's our job to provide that safe space.
Great podcast. Thanks for giving us a chance to talk about these things.
Well, thank you for sharing all your wisdom, Bob.
Thank you so much, dear. And you, of course.
So next week we're going to be talking, it's going to be number 210, and we're going to be talking about, does a therapist's display of emotions affect the therapeutic process?
Perfect. I will love this. And of course, the caveat and already in that, which is if the therapist shows emotions.
Okay.
Because I'll tell you why. You can get therapists who are trained never to show emotions.
Yes, well, I was thinking about that.
What I call the stoic therapist.
Okay.
Or the being perfect therapist. We'll leave it for the next.
For the next.
I'll be here another hour.
Okay, we'll save it for the podcast, Bob. Say goodbye to the listeners and see you next time.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
You've been listening to The Therapy Show, Behind Closed Doors podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show. Don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review. We'll be back next week with another episode.